Yeah.
All right, got it. Well, very, very good. Thank you all for coming today. Today's topic is business planning for 2024, part of our agent development program. And I'm glad that you're all here. As I was sort of preparing for this, a lot of it is second nature to me, but I recognized as I was reflecting how much time that I spend planning and how much it has made a difference in my career over the years to be around people that are business people and that run their real estate business like a business, and how meaningful and helpful that has been to me. So I'm hoping that I can pass along some ideas and some exercises and encouragement to you to go a little bit deeper as you plan for 2024. So thank you all for being here. I believe, I'm going to start off with talking about a little bit of the attachments that were sent out to you. I believe you received a RE/MAX one-page business plan that's very simple. You received an entrepreneur's mantra, which is a pretty fairly complex business financial tool. There was a document that was sent out that was RE/MAX 20 questions, which I think is a tool of gathering numbers and gathering information that's helpful for your planning, and then a business planning scorecard. So did everybody receive all of those things? I see some Evan shaking his head yes, so great. Did anybody by a show of hands take a chance to take a look at them ahead of time? Vlasta took a look at them ahead of time. Anybody else look at them ahead of time?
Just briefly, but I couldn't print them, so it was just on my computer.
Okay, very good. So, I just want to sort of give a little bit of an overview, or just make some comments on that. The RE/MAX one-page business plan is very, very simple. And from my perspective, it might be a little bit too simple. I think there's about 7 or 8 questions that are on there that you can fill out. And I think that, the more time and effort that you put into the exercise of your business planning, the better off you will be. The entrepreneur's mantra that I said was fairly complex. I mean, it is, a handful of pages. And it starts off with, writing down your aspirations and your goals and your desires and what you want to do. And then it attaches, on here, how much does it cost? I mean, one of the most important things I remember about goal setting early on was when you have a goal is to find out what it costs. If you say, I want to make a lot of money, that your brain doesn't know what a lot of money is. I don't know what a lot of money is. Some people think $30,000 is a lot of money. Some people think $100,000 is a lot of money. Some people think, $100 million is a lot of money. So when you are doing your goals and you're talking about different things, the more specific that you can be, the better off you're going to be. So I really like that part of this, aspiration in your goals where it talks about it, where it puts what is the actual cost that's on it. It also goes into a home budget, a living budget. It talks about a business budget. And from my experience as a broker, being around for 38 years in the business, I think there's a lot of salespeople that never really take the time to sit down and fill out what does it actually cost to run your household? What does it actually cost to plan for retirement? What does it actually cost to take care of your healthcare expenses? What does it cost to do all of those? So what money are you going to be investing back into your business? And so, without going into the whole document and going through it, which is something that I'd be happy to do with all of you if you had questions on it specifically, or you wanted to work through it personally, I would go through that with you on an individual basis because people's finances typically are pretty private. But it goes into what does it cost to live? What is it going to cost to, what's my budget for entertainment? What is my budget for savings? How many people in the real estate business have a plan for savings? Anybody here have a plan for savings? Mary does. Okay. Michael does. There you guys go. Very good. Most salespeople that I've recognized don't have a plan for savings because their income isn't very steady. So their plan for savings is whenever something is left over, then they save that. If they don't go on vacation first, right? Yeah, that's typically what happens. Okay. And I realize that because we are in an environment or a business where our income is not steady, there's peaks and valleys and ups and downs with our business, that it's very, very hard to have a budget. But there are ways to have a budget, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so business budget. So I really like this entrepreneur's document, because I think it forces you to think about things with your finances and with your money that a lot of real estate salespeople have not done. The next thing that I really liked, and I'll bring this one up, this was the questionnaire document that asks you to rate yourself. If this looks like it was adapted by a tool that I've used for Mike Ferry called the 20 questions, and it asks you to rate yourself on your mindset, rate yourself on your goal setting and your business planning practices, rate yourself on your time management, all of the things that are important about your business. They're asking you to self-rate yourself. Low, is 1, 2, 3, or 4, medium, 5, 6, 7, high is 8, 9, 10. One of the things that I find interesting about doing this exercise is that people that have really high production tend to give themselves lower scores when they're self-rating themselves, because they're demanding so much more of themselves. The people that don't have really strong skills will oftentimes rate themselves higher in comparison to high producers. So I thought that was interesting. Doing this exercise and going through and self-rating yourself here will help you as we go through our business plan, where we talk about things that are perhaps challenges, for the production goals that you've set for the year. You might find some of the answers in personal development with those issues. Any questions so far? Any comments so far? All review. Okay. The last document, that came out here, it says your numbers needed for business planning. And this is really important stuff. What is your average sales price in 2023? What was your average sales price in 2022? Average commission amount, the percentage of your listings that went sold or pending, the percentage of your listings that actually sold, how many buyer appointments did you have, how many listing appointments did you have, all of those kinds of things. And so, self-honest check, how many of you know exactly how many appointments that you went on in the last, well, now what are we in? We're in October. In the last 10 months, how many people know exactly how many listing appointments that they went on? That's an honest, Mike, you're absolutely sure with that number? That's good. It's good to keep numbers. And as we go through our business planning, one of the things that's really, really hard to do is it's hard to come up with a business plan if you don't know what you've done in the past. If you don't know your numbers, it's really hard to make a decision as what you should do the following year to either duplicate what your production was or to improve your production. It's very hard to do that. So as we get into business planning, I'm going to go through basically the tool that I like to use, which is the Mike Ferry business plan. There's 5 parts to it. It asks you to recap the previous year. That's first part. And then to set up specific goals and production goals for the next year or for 2024. It asks you to identify what the numbers are that you need to do, in order to achieve those goals. The 4th part of the exercise is to come up with a daily schedule where you can put in the activities that will help you get those numbers to achieve the goals. And then the last one is to identify any challenges and solutions that you might have in reaching your goals for the following year. So I'm going to go through. Hopefully you guys take notes on this. I know that Nicole is going to be sending you guys some notes afterwards with the outline for the class. So The first part is to recap your previous year's production. That document looks like this. It's one page, and it asks you to put numbers into it. So the first question that asks you is, what was your total income paid? And I'm going to use some round numbers just for the ability to sort of run through it. Obviously, I don't know what your numbers are, but I'm going to use round numbers just for the purpose of going through the exercise. As you go back and say, well, what was my total income paid for the last 12 months? And I'm going to write in the number of $100,000. Okay. The second number that it asks is, what is your total business expenses? Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that don't know what their total business expenses are. I can tell you, I don't know what mine are year to date, but I know all I have to do is go open up QuickBooks and I can find out what we spent so far this year. But say for the purpose of our exercise that you have MLS dues, you have your lockbox key, you have your annual things that you're spending, you are spending some advertising and some mailers. So let's just say that the total number is $20,000. Okay, so that's the number I'm going to write in for our exercise. But this is exactly what you would be doing if you were going to be using this program for business planning. The next question that it asks you is, how many closed deals did you have? I'm going to write down the number 20. For total listing appointments, I'm going to write down the number 25, which is a little over 2 a month. Total listings taken, I am going to write down the number, let's say 17. Total listings sold, we're going to say that the number is 10. Buyer sales, remember we had 20 closed deals, so I'm going to say our buyer sales number is 10. Average sales price is going to be $225,000. That's pretty low, isn't it? Average commission check, 20 transactions by 100 is $5,000. Average hours worked per week. That's a tough one. Let's say that we are honest with ourselves and we say that the number is 30 hours a week. And we'll talk about some of these things as we go through it. Current pending, let's say we have 2 transactions pending. Our present inventory is 5. The days that we worked in 2023 during this recap, let's say that we work 200 days for a round number because it makes the math easier. Total hours prospected. Who knows how many hours they prospected in the last year? Okay, so I'm going to put no number in there because we don't know what that number is. And the total contacts that we made for the year. Does anybody know the total number of contacts they made for a year? No. Okay. So I'm going to ask Vlasta, because Vlasta knows the answer to this, or I think that she does. Vlasta, why is it important to know how many contacts that you had in the previous year? And you have to unmute yourself when you share.
Okay, sorry. Well, I'm tracking this, how much contacts I have to get basically to get listing and how many listings I need to have listings sold.
Right.
So that's the reason I'm doing. And my ratio is always high to get a listing. So I know I have to do more numbers. But when I get a listing, I have very good ratio on listings sold.
Very good.
So that's the way I do.
So one of the things that is really important, thanks Vlasta for sharing that, one of the things that's really important to know about keeping track of your numbers is if you don't know what your numbers are, you can't plan. It's very, very difficult to plan if you don't know what your numbers are. So one of the questions that I wrote down when we're reviewing our 2023 production, one of the really important questions to ask yourself is, where did your business come from? Now, remember, for our example of doing this particular business plan, we said that we had 20 closed transactions and that I took 17 listings and that 10 of those sold and that I had 10 buyer sales. Okay. So the really important question to ask from those transactions, those listings that you got and the sales that you made, is, where did those clients come from? Did they come from walk-ins? Did they come in from an expired listing that you called? Did they come from a for sale by owner? Did they come from a sign call on a listing that you had? Did they come from a referral from another agent or a past client? Did they come from a Zillow lead or a Realtor.com lead? Did they come from a family friend or somebody that is on the kids' soccer team? It's, where did your business come from? Okay.
Don't forget to say uptime.
Uptime. I said walk-in.
Yeah, but I specifically mean uptime because uptime can be internet, phone call, or a walk-in. So
Okay.
it's very, wide range, not just a walk-in.
Okay. So I'm asking you this question because in order to create a business plan, these are the questions that you need to be asking yourself so you know where your business is coming from. It's my fear that the vast majority of agents have absolutely no idea where their business came from in the last year. Now, if you haven't been keeping track of your numbers on a daily or a weekly basis, you can still sit down in an afternoon on a Sunday and go back through your records and, ask yourself the question, where did these people come from? Where did I get them? What did I do to get them? The next question I ask myself regarding that 2023 production review is, are the sources of your business something that is accidental? Or is it something that is duplicatable, something that you can repeat? So for an example, is if somebody walks into the office and you get a sale out of that, that is something that is only duplicatable if you show up for your floor time regularly. I mean, if you have a lot of floor time or if you have regular floor time and you show up, you can keep track of, I had, 47 shifts last year of floor time and I got 4 walk-ins during that. So 1 out of every 10, shifts, I'm going to get a walk-in that is going to provide me business. That's something that is duplicatable if you're repeating that activity over and over and over again. If you're holding open houses and you hold an open house, I want to say half of the weekends a year, 25 of them, and you get 5 buyers out of it, for 1 out of every 5 open houses that you have, you're going to get a buyer from that. So you can take a look at what your activities are that's creating the business or putting you in the position in order to receive your business. So here's why it's so important to know if you're a prospecting agent and you're talking with people. See, it's my belief, and most sales trainers will tell you, the more people that you talk to, the more chances that you're going to have to get business. And so one of the scripts that I used, for sale by owners or, holding open houses, when people say, hey, would you hold an open house for me? Is I would say, I've got 2 choices, during my 4 hours of an open house on a Saturday. I can sit in your home and hope that 3, 4, 5 couples walk through, or I can go into my office and literally get on the phone and talk with 20, 30, 40, 50 people and talk to them about your home and talk to them about doing business. Which do you think is going to get you a better chance of me getting your home sold? Talking with 50 people about your home or talking with 4 or 5 couples? Anybody know the answer to that question or want to share it? Okay, real estate is a numbers game. Real estate is a numbers game. So the more people that you talk to, the better your chances of getting business. Now, why is it so important to know, how many total hours you prospected and how many contacts that you have? Is that as you do these numbers, you know that you had 20 closed transactions, you had 10 sellers, and if you know that your listings came from calling, if you know that it came from calling expired listings or calling in your sphere of influence, you can do the math and say for every 1,000 calls that I make 10 sales. I get 10 listings that sell for every 1,000 calls that I make. And if I decide next year that I want to double my income, if I know that the next year I want to double my income, I know that I have to call 2,000 people. And I know because the numbers will dictate how much money that I'm going to make. Does that make sense? Okay. You can only predict your business if you are keeping track of your numbers. Go ahead, Michael. I can't hear you, but can't hear you, Michael. Yeah. Yeah. Why don't you type it into the chat, Michael, and I'll see if I can answer it that way. Okay. Because I can't hear you. Okay. So this first part of the business plan is really about reviewing what you've done in the past. Okay. If you were to go to the doctor and say, "Hey, I'm not feeling well," and he says, "Let me give you a shot," you'd probably say, "What the hell is wrong with you?" You have to know, what the problem is before you can find out the solution. And it's the same thing with your business and planning, is you have to look at what you've done in the past in order to help you in coming up with a good option for the future. Okay. So until I get that question from Michael, I'm going to move on to the next one, which is to set specific 2024 production goals. Okay. That part of the business plan is where you take what you did the previous year, and you decide what you want to do for the next year. So in 2024, I've decided that I don't want to make $100,000. I want to make $150,000, which means that I'm going to be trying to get a 50% increase in my business. Big question for everybody. Do you think I can do exactly the same thing I did this year, next year, and hope to make 50% more income? Probably not. Probably not. Okay. So that's why this planning thing is so important. So my closed deal goal is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something a little bit different. Instead of saying that I want to add another 10 transactions, I'm going to say that I want to add another 5. And I'm going to tell you what I'm going to be doing with that that's a little bit different. This is the thought process going through it, is that instead of having an average sales price of $225,000, I'm going to shoot for an average sales price of $350,000. There's a lot of ways that you can make more money than doing more deals. You can do it by working in a higher price range, okay? So my listing appointment goal, I know last year that I did 25 listing presentations and I took 17. I am going to shoot for 40 listing appointments. In my listing taken goal, I'm going to say that I want that to be 30. Listing sold goal, I want that to be 20. My buyer sales goal, I want to be 5. Anybody have any questions why I would want to have 20% or 20 listings sold and only 5 buyer sales? Why would I put that as part of my plan? Anybody have a thought on that?
Well, part of me thinks you want to get more listings versus trying to attract more buyers.
Okay, exactly. So here's what's interesting about anybody ever work with a buyer that ran you around ragged and then bought from an agent down the hill or from their cousin? Or did you ever have a buyer that ran you around for 6 months and said, I'm not in a hurry? I mean,
Yeah.
and have you ever worked with a buyer where you didn't have a buyer broker agreement with them? Everybody says yes. Okay. So to have a long-term business in real estate, there's phrases that really make sense. Listers last. Whoever has the listings controls the marketplace and controls the inventory. You also are much more able to control your schedule when you are working with listings rather than with buyers. When buyers say, I'm coming up, Sunday afternoon at 4:00, I don't care about your kid's birthday party. I need you to show me property. Guess what you're doing at 4:00 on a Sunday afternoon? You're showing property to that particular buyer. Okay. So, being a strong listing agent is the best way to be successful in this business. And I want that to be part of my plan. Okay. Here's another way for me to make that point for all of you is, and you can use fingers to show me, what is the highest number of buyer sales that you can make on a Saturday and Sunday weekend? If you work all day Saturday and Sunday, how many buyers do you think you can sell successfully in one weekend? By a show of fingers. I think I saw 2 from Jonathan. Was that right? Maybe it's 2, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 4. Does anybody think they can successfully sell more than 4 buyers on a weekend? Probably not, right? Now, if you have 10 listings that are active on a weekend, how many listings can you sell each weekend?
All 10.
All 10. And guess what? You don't have to do it at 4:00 during your child's birthday party either. Okay. So being a strong listing agent is one of the things that will make you more successful over the long term in this business. And that's what I'm writing into my goal. The other part of this decision is that because I'm going to work with less buyers, that's going to give me more time in my daily schedule to prospect for more listings. Makes sense? So that's part of my plan. My goal for hours per week, I'm going to work 40 this week. That's my goal. Goal for days worked, I'm going to work 5 a week, which is about 250 days a year. My prospecting goal, now this is interesting because we didn't know what our numbers were last time. So I'm going to plan to prospect 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. That's 15 hours a week. Is that right? 3 times 5 is 15. What's 15 times 50? That is 750 hours of prospecting. Is that right? Did I do my math right? That's 750 hours of prospecting. And if I talk with 10 people each of those hours, that means I'm going to talk with 7,500 people. Do you think if I talk with 7,500 people over the course of a year that I'm going to be able to get 30 listing appointments? And take go on 40 listing appointments? I mean, that's 1 out of every 200 people I talk to. Sounds like a lot of work, I know, talking with 200 people to getting a listing appointment. But I know if I do that I'm going to take my 40 listings, I'm probably going to take 30 listings and 20 of them are going to sell. And if I take 20 good saleable listings, I'm going to get 5 buyers that come to me. Okay. The other part of my plan, as we talked about, was to prospect for higher price listings than 225. That's one of the ways that I want to make more money. Okay. So the third part coming up is the numbers required to achieve those goals. And I sort of gave you a little bit of an overview of that. Any questions or comments right now? I like it so much better when we're face to face and you guys are all talking back to me and asking questions. Put them in the chat if you guys have questions. Okay, so part 3 is the numbers required to achieve the goals we've set. So listing appointments to listings taken. I wrote down that I wanted 40 listing appointments and I was going to take 30. That's a 75% percentage there. My listings sold, I wanted to have 20, which means that I would be selling 66% of my listings. That's not the best number, but that may be realistic in the market that we're in. Buyers sales to listings sold, I wanted to have 5 out of 20, out of 25, which is only 20% working with buyers. Means I can work with just the most motivated and the most pre-qualified buyers. Okay. Prospecting per day, we already talked about that, 3 hours a day. 750 hours for the year. Contacts per hour, we talked about 10. So does anybody have any questions? You guys have to have questions about how I'm keeping track of these numbers. Somebody's got to have a question about it.
I actually was wondering how you would keep track of these numbers over the course of 12 months. I kind of just thought of like an Excel spreadsheet, but that's really like the only thing I could really think of.
Yep. I would have to go back to Bill Young to see if he would recreate it. But at one time, he gave me an Excel spreadsheet that had track of all the numbers that I wanted to keep. And I was using that for a long time. And basically, if you keep your track of what you're doing every single day and you put it into that spreadsheet, it'll keep track for you. And you'll be able to look at those numbers in real time as you're going through it. Make sense?
I thought Mike Ferry had a spreadsheet or a daily task that you could write down every day, and then at the end of every week, you wrote down what you did at the end of the week, and then you could go, there's only 52
Transfer.
weeks, you could transfer that to a spreadsheet.
Yeah, you can use the Mike Ferry daily tracking number that, and that's what I would do is, I would just keep track of what I'm doing for the day and then add it in, that kind of thing. But it's really important. So I'm going to go into this a little bit more deeply with why keeping track of your numbers is so important, is because we make a lot of money in real estate. We make a lot, but we do it on accident. So often we do it on accident. And the most important thing that I can share with you about keeping track of your numbers is that if you do this and you're making $100,000, $200,000 a year, and you're keeping track of your numbers, you know that you can do the math and figure out how much money you're making for every single phone call that you make, every time that you talk with somebody. You can keep track of how much every conversation is worth $25. I did that. I can't remember. It was probably 2014, 2015. Every single person that I talked to was like $24. And then I knew if I talked with, 30 or 40 people a day, I knew exactly how much money that I was making. Okay. So it helps you when you understand the numbers and you understand your business plan and you're working it as a business. It helps you make better decisions. Anybody ever have a problem deal? Okay. Everybody's had a problem deal. What's the first thing people do when they have a problem deal? They stop prospecting. Right? That's the first thing they do is they stop prospecting. Okay. Well, if you know that you're prospecting every single day and you're making $400 a day prospecting and you don't prospect, how much money did you lose? $400. So if you know your numbers and you're working and you've got your system going where you're prospecting, and I know Vlasta and a lot of people that have called over the years, every single day that you make your calls, you're making money. And when you have a problem deal and you say, you know what, I'm going to focus all my time and energy on solving this deal, and I'm not going to prospect, you might save the deal and you might not save the deal. But I guarantee you lost your $400 because you didn't prospect that day. Okay. How many of the deals that you work on fail no matter what? Some of them. Okay. But when you miss your prospecting, you're losing money every single day that you miss it. Okay. So that's an important thing to do. You know, a lot of people don't keep track of their numbers, unfortunately, and so you don't know how much money you're losing by not prospecting. Part 4 is creating a daily schedule to help you to stay on schedule to achieve the goals that you've set. So if you know what you're going to be doing in order to create the business and manage the business that you have, it's important to come up with what Mike Ferry calls the perfect day. For those that have gone through the foundation class, I mean, I think it starts at, 8 in the morning with, reviewing your scripts, and then it talks about role playing, and it talks about prospecting, and it talks about administrative time, it talks about previewing property. All of those things should be part of your daily schedule. So I'm not going to go into that very much, in this particular class, but it's important that if you're creating a plan, that you create a schedule that's going to help you follow through on that plan. Okay. Oh, I feel like I'm talking so much. Okay. So here is the last part, which is the challenges and solutions part of the business plan. And the challenges come up, there's a couple of different things that I wanted to share with you. One is the questions that had where it talked about you to self-rate on your prospecting skill, self-rate on your scheduling and time management, self-rate on your knowledge of the inventory, to self-rate yourself on those things. I mean, when you ask yourself the question by self-rating on your skills, you may realize that in order to take more listings and to achieve the goal I've set, I've got to get better at my listing presentation. So you may recognize that as a challenge. My listing presentation isn't good enough to get 40 listings next year. My prospecting time is not sufficient to help me reach the goals that I've set next year. There can be all kinds of challenges that have to do with our skills and our work ethic and the environment that we're at and the things that we're doing. So what you want to do is you want to take a look at what challenges that are going to get in the way of you reaching your goals and try to find a solution for it. It might be interruptions. You may say, I'm going to prospect, behind a closed door at the office. Or I'm going to prospect early before other people get in, or I'm going to prospect on a Sunday afternoon when nobody else is in the office. I mean, because you can do that because there's not a lot of people in the office after, afternoon on Sunday. So you can do that. The other thing that you can do, and I want you guys to take notes on this, is do a SWOT analysis. And SWOT is just what it sounds like, SWOT. Some of you may have heard this before, and some of you may not have, but what they stand for is strengths. S is strengths, W is weaknesses, O is for opportunities, and T is for
Threats.
threats. There we go. There we go. Okay. So you might, go into this and say, well, what are my strengths? Well, number one, you guys work for the number one real estate company in town, and we have a lot of name recognition and a lot of goodwill in the community. So when you tell somebody you're from a RE/MAX office, that's a strength. Okay. I know for the people that work on my team, one of the strengths that they have is that they personally go look at all the new inventory. That's a strength. Because you're doing that, people, when you're doing a presentation, you can say, hey, I've been in that house. I've been in that house. I go and look at all the new listings. That's the strength because it makes your credibility better. But you also may have some weaknesses. Okay, so you want to identify what those weaknesses are so that you can address them as part of your business plan for the year. As you may say, you know what, I'm going to do two things to address weaknesses that I've had this year. I'm going to save 10% of every single one of my checks in order to get ahead financially so that I have a bigger cushion so I'm not losing sleep at night over cash flow. That would be a good thing to add to your business plan. Another thing that you could add to your business plan is I'm going to join Toastmasters so I can work on my presentation skills and my public speaking skills because I want to be able to do a better job selling. So those are things that you might say that you want to address weaknesses in your business plan. I've thought a lot about this for all of you is, opportunities and threats. It's really important to recognize that, what some people consider to be a threat is usually an opportunity that is in disguise. Okay. So you guys are going to have to participate in this. What threats do any of you recognize for your business plan in 2024? What threats do you recognize?
Rising interest rates.
That is definitely a threat. What else do we got?
The market's really saturated.
What's it saturated with, Michael?
A lot of listings. So when you have listings, there's a lot of competition out there.
Okay. So there's more competition for the buyers that are out there looking at properties. So that's a threat. Rising interest rates and difficulty with buyers being able to get financing. That's a threat. What other
Down the hill agents.
down the hill agents are a threat? Yes,
Do not
absolutely.
do not call list.
Do not call list is a threat. That's not. It's not really it. Well, it could be considered a threat. What other threats are out there?
Ian had said overpriced listings.
Overpriced listings. Okay. So each of those things that we talked about, we talked about rising interest rates, more inventory than there is buyers, having to be more competitive with the buyers, competition not only from agents within our own community, but from outside the area. Each of those threats represent an opportunity. They all represent an opportunity, okay? The one that we can't really address is the rising interest rates, other than is that we can recognize what options are out there for buyers, to have a positive attitude with it, not quit, okay? Probably the biggest opportunity with rising interest rates and the buyers and their, negative attitudes about interest rates is to not buy their negative attitude, okay? Out of 250 agents that are in the local market up there, I think there's a good portion of them that have just said, you know what, I'm not going to work until the interest rates come down because it's no use. Nobody can buy anything anyway. I mean, not quitting, up with a script and a dialogue to encourage people to move forward and encourage people to do a transaction if they can is an opportunity. The other opportunity that's out there is that if somebody says no, to have the mindset that you're going to say next, put them aside and go call somebody else and them if they want to buy. Makes sense? Or if they want to sell. Having a lot more listings than there are buyers means that having listings that are well priced is more of an opportunity. Do we have any control whether we take the listings, our listings are more competitive? Do we have any control over that? We do. We have scripts and dialogues, and we have the opportunity to prospect for more clients in order to find listings that are going to be better priced. We have the ability to do that. Down the hill agents, we have the same thing that, there, which is we have the opportunity to educate the people that we're dealing with and to change our business practices to deal with them and compete with them more effectively. Make sense? So for every threat that is out there, there is an opportunity. So part of this business planning that Mike Ferry talks about and what we've gone through in an overview today is designed to have you look at the end of, your business process. Here's what I did in 2023. Here's what I want to do in 2024. I know how I got to 2023, which we may not be able to answer very well if we haven't been keeping track of our numbers. But at least as we're planning for 2024, we can say, here's the numbers that I think it's going to take me to reach my goal. And here's the schedule for me to work at in order to accomplish it. And the last part of it is in my schedule, I'm going to have time for personal development to improve my prospecting skills, improve my listing presentation, improve my presentation by going to Toastmasters and getting more education. these are the 4 or 5 things that I'm going to do to improve the way that I operate my business and my skills in the coming year. Does that make sense for everybody? Okay. Let's see. We are about 10 minutes left. I'm going to finish up with a message at the end, but I wanted to go through any questions or comments that you guys have so far.
Well, so Mark, going back to the numbers. So we know that we need to do 15 hours a week or 3 hours a day prospecting. How many contacts do you think that equates?
Should be 30. It
as
should
far
be
as
it should be
3 hours
10
a day?
contacts, 10 contacts per.
10 contacts per hour. So is that actually speaking to someone? We always have the question, is that actually speaking to someone or is that leaving a voicemail?
Yeah, if you're
Or do you need
yeah,
a voicemail?
yeah.
Is that an idea?
the only time that I would count a contact is if you're talking with somebody that you have an ongoing back and forth relationship with. Okay, so let me give you an example. If I'm calling an expired listing that doesn't know me and I leave them a message, that is not a contact. If I call a for sale by owner and leave a message, that's not a contact. If I call a past client that I have talked to 2-3 times a year, that I'm, doing my sphere of influence and my working my database, and I have an ongoing relationship with this person and I leave him a voicemail or her a voicemail, that would be a contact because they're going to listen to the message and I've already got a relationship with them, and that's going to help. Leaving a message for somebody that you don't is not a contact.
Okay, so the 10 contacts per day or per hour,
Yes.
that's 30 contacts a day.
Mhm.
Okay, just clarify.
I know.
And we all know Maggie used to do like 50 to 85 a day call, but they're not all contacts, but
Right.
yeah, so contacts a day.
That's a lot of contacts. So,
But the 3 hours went up
I
too.
thought it was 6 hours a day, 10 contacts a day for, is that 30 a week? No. Was it really 30?
I don't know, that's
10 per hour.
that's 30 a day.
It's 30 a day,
It's
okay.
30 a day. Yeah. Yeah, that's 30 a day. And I know that's a lot of contacts, and it's very hard to do it. You probably have to work up to it. I mean, if you're not prospecting, and this is not a prospecting class, this is a business planning class. If you are not prospecting every day, to try and make 30 contacts a day next week, you'll never prospect again. It will be so difficult to go from 0 to 30 a day. If you try and, when you run a marathon, you don't go out and run 26 miles the first day. You run a couple of miles one day and you wait a couple of days and you run a couple more miles and you build up and you build up. And, a month from now, you might be running 5 miles a day, 3, 4, 5 days a week. You don't go out and run a marathon race the first day, you build up to it. Make sense? So don't anybody go try and make 150 contacts in the next week and then quit, because Dana will fire me.
right. When,
Okay.
I know people have questions about where do they get the numbers to call 30 people a day? Where do you get 30 numbers a day to call from different categories? Should we categorize, like, I'm gonna make 10 calls to expireds, I'm gonna make 10, let's say 5 FSBOs, because maybe, how do you find the FSBOs? You have to drive around and find the signs and just call them. That's kind of a random thing. If you're newer, you don't have a lot of past clients, but you have some. Most everybody here has been in the business, at least a year or 2 or more, even if you're newer. So you even if all your calls are to past clients or sphere, right? It could be sphere, your Christmas card list that you haven't talked to in a year.
Yeah.
whatever.
There's a hierarchy in my mind. There is a hierarchy to, or a way that you categorize your calls. And Jonathan just put it in their sphere of influence. The people that know you, love you, and want to help you. Those are the first people in the world I want to be calling. If I'm not calling them, well, here's what happens when I call sphere of influence. I usually have a good, I don't get rejected by them. Okay. The other thing that happens when I call my sphere of influence is because I'm calling them. If somebody else happens to call them, I don't lose them. If I'm not calling my sphere of influence and other people are calling them, I lose them. I don't want to lose my sphere of influence. They already like me and know me, so I want to do that. The second hierarchy that I call is I like calling expired listings. Those are people that want to sell. They're people that have already signed a contract with somebody else and they weren't successful with somebody else. So they're probably a little bit ticked off. And they're probably going to want to hear the truth about what it's going to take to get their home sold. So I love calling expired listings. The next part of the hierarchy is for sale by owners. They've waved their hand and said, I want to sell. They've implied at least that they don't want to sign a listing agreement, but that's better than having somebody that you don't even know wants to sell. For sale by owner, that they want to sell. You can find those on Zillow. You can find those, on the internet. You can find them. You can find them driving around by seeing signs when you're out previewing property. Just take down the numbers and call them. The next one that I would call is, people that are basically cold, that are in your farm area. And so, if you're mailing into a farm and you have 500 or 1,000 people, I would call the people that are in that farm because you've already got an introduction to them because they've been seeing your mailers. And so they've seen your face and they've seen your name over and over. So when you call them, they're going to say, hey, that guy sounds familiar. Right. And then the last, and you might do, just listed calls, just sold calls. One of the best scripts for a just listed call is I'm going to pretend I'm calling Michael. Michael, this is Mark Dolan. I'm calling from Remax and Big Bear, and I just listed a home for sale over in your area. And I was wondering which of your friends would like to, buy a house in Big Bear near you. And he says, well, nobody, and I go, great. I appreciate you taking the time to think about that. When do you plan on moving? I'm never going to move. Great. Do you mind if I stay in touch with you? No, don't ever call me. But okay, have a great day. And you call the next guy. Okay. But you've got to talk with people. I mean, every single time, if you remember keeping track of your numbers, I know that I can do the math based on the people that I talk to and the business that I get. I can predict how many listings I'm going to get if I know my numbers. And once I can do that, I know that every single person I call and talk to is worth $50. And if they're worth $50, then I know that I just need to talk with 30 people to make, what is that? $450. Okay. Or whatever the number is. It's a lot of money to do that. But you won't know that unless you're making calls and keeping track of your numbers.
Well, and it seems like when you call somebody about their property, they're interested to talk to you. Once you introduce yourself as a, local real estate agent in Big Bear, and they own property in Big Bear, the first thing they're going to ask you is, how's the market in Big Bear? What's going on up there? Because, 9 times or maybe 8 times out of 10, they're not going to be living here, and maybe they haven't even been to their property in a year or more.
Yeah.
So my thought is just that, we need to be top of mind with the current market stats. And that's, information that's available, just print it out on the MLS or, whatever, just have that as something in front of you when you're making calls. Well, how many listings have sold in the last 30 days? And what's the time on the market? And how much has it gone up or down since last year? And that just general kind of stuff that people want to know. Is now a good time to sell? Of course it is.
Always.
It's an unbelievable time to sell. That's my answer. It's an unbelievable time to sell. When we sell your home, what are you going to do next? Because I want to find out what their motivation is, because they're only going to do it if it works for them. Okay. So,
I'm just saying, be ready for the conversation, because you're gonna get those people that are glad to hear from you, because they wanna know about their property in Big Bear. And nobody else is calling them and talking to them about it.
yeah, the biggest threat, the biggest threat right now, to our
Or in Palm
business,
Springs in Tara's case, or Coachella Valley, I should say.
the biggest threat is fear. Everybody's scared. The real estate industry is scared. The buyers are scared. The sellers are scared. Everybody's scared. Okay. So to be a calming, knowledgeable, encouraging influence is, people would love to talk to somebody that is encouraging and positive and has information that they can act on. Okay, they're going to remember that person that's there for them. So, last comment before I share this story about Atomic Habits, which I recommended in the past, everybody, the book Atomic Habits. I'm going to share one thought that came out of that book. But I remember back in 2008, those that were in the business in 2008, the market stopped in the second half of 2008. It absolutely stopped. Okay, there was a period that if all the competition was listed at 350,000 and you were listed at 290 and you showed it to your buyer after the showing would say, "Hey, that's really nice." And you'd say, "Do you want to buy it?" And they go, "No, call me when something good comes on the market." It was a terrible experience going through that. Much worse than it is today, by the way. But there was a lender that spent 40 hours cold calling for business in a week. 40 hours. I think if I remember correctly, he talked with about 700 people in a week. Could you imagine calling 700 people in a week? How hard would that be? How much rejection? How many people hung up on him? He got $70,000 worth of loans out of those 700 contacts. Who'd like to make $70,000 in a week? Okay, so calling does work. Okay, so I'm going to share this thought with you. It's from the book Atomic Habits. Been recommending, if you haven't got the book, I would go out and get it. It's a lot of great stuff in here. But this is talking about, the point of it is about having the perfect plan versus actually doing a plan. So it starts out, it says, "It is easy to get bogged down trying to find the optimal plan for change. The fastest way to lose weight, the best program to build muscle, the perfect idea for a side hustle." I underlined, we are so focused on figuring out the best approach that we never get around to taking action. And as Voltaire once wrote, the best is the enemy of the good. He says, "I refer to this as the difference between being in motion and taking action. The two ideas sound similar, but they are not the same. When you're in motion, you're planning and strategizing and learning. Those are all good things, but they don't produce results. Action, on the other hand, is the type of behavior that will deliver an outcome. If I outline 20 ideas for articles I want to write, that's motion. If I actually sit down and write an article, that's action. If I search for a better diet plan and read a few books on the topic, that's motion. If I actually eat a healthy meal, that's action. Sometimes motion is useful, but it will never produce an outcome by itself. It doesn't matter how many times you go talk to the personal trainer, that motion will never get you in shape. Only the action of working out will get the result you're looking to achieve." And here's a paragraph on it. "If motion doesn't lead to results, why do we do it? Sometimes we do it because we actually need to plan or learn more. That's why you guys are here today, to learn more. But more often than not, we do it because motion allows us to feel like we're making progress without running the risk of failure. Think about that. More often than not, we are in motion because it allows us to feel like we're making progress without running the risk of failure. Most of us are experts at avoiding criticism. It doesn't feel good to fail or be judged publicly, so we tend to avoid situations where that might happen. And that's the biggest reason why you slip into motion rather than taking action. You want to delay failure. One of the interesting things that he had to support this was he talked about a group of people that were taking a photography class. And he had two groups. One group, he says, your semester assignment, your 100% of your grade is going to be based on how many photos you take. So it was a photography class. And so they got graded based on the sheer quantity and not the quality, but the quantity. They were going to get all of their grade based on how many pictures they took. The other group, he said, you're going to be given your grade on the best picture that you take. You don't have to, you only have to take one. You're going to turn in your best picture and you're going to get graded on that. What was interesting about the exercise is the people that took the best photographs were the people that took a lot of them. The people that tried to have the perfect photograph didn't have very good photos at all. The people that took a lot of pictures, because what they did was they took a lot of pictures, they analyzed them, they learned from their mistakes, they changed their lighting, they learned by doing the quantity of it. And so the point that I want to make with this business plan is it's more important that you do a plan, even if it's a bad plan, because then you can improve it, than it is to not do the plan at all or to delay it and try to make the perfect plan. Go out and make the best plan that you can based on what we've talked about, and then implement it. And after you've done that, the next time you make a plan, it will be a little bit better. And the next time you make a business plan, it will be a little bit better. So your assignment is to get started on your business plan for 2024. Okay? Thanks
Sounds
everybody for coming.
like a plan.
And I know that I am open to, assisting you with your business plans. And I know that Dan and Simeon, you guys have done that as well. So, make sure that if you're working on your plan, get to it and, get our input and get our help if you need it. Okay.
I have something to add. This is a corny thing, first of all, always brings up a thought that my daddy always said, do something, even if it's wrong. So just do something. There's no wrong, but because you're doing something. And then you can always improve. And the other thing is, we have a new plan for Friday morning at 8:30. We're having something called the Early Bird Group. And this week we are going to be focusing on financing options /101 or 101/options, because it's not just for someone, that's just a brand new beginner who needs to know about financing. But I'm sure there's seasoned agents who don't know everything about all the financing options. So we're going to have a 20-minute precursor, if you will, to our regular sales meeting. So it'll be 8:30 until 8:50. So it'll be a separate Zoom link. So you can log on to, go into that meeting, and then Michelle Town is going to be giving us an outline, and also any questions. Now's the time, write down your questions about financing. What's the difference between a VA and an FHA or a conventional, or other resources or other ways, to make it happen when somebody just says, well, I don't have the money, you know, I don't have enough of a down payment or whatever it is. So get in on that little early bird special.
Very good.
Okay, we'll see you guys at 8:30 on Friday morning, if not before.
Thank you.
All right, bye, guys.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you. Bye.
Have
Have a
a
good-